Welcome in, everybody, to a Football Friday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mac, John McMullen. As we wrap up another week here in the offseason, John, we getting closer to training camp, to the offseason action, and then before we know it, we'll be there for the season. How you doing on this Football Friday, brother?
I'm doing well. A little bit rainy locally for the big Truist Championship. So if anyone's down there, they moved the tee times up. I know that. For some reason, I get all these releases. So thank you, Truist.
Truist keeping Johnny Mac in the loop.
Keeping me in the loop. So, but yeah, we'll get through it. Football Friday, NBA playoffs. Go Timberwolves. You know, big Minnesota guy, as everybody knows. They win last night. And your Philadelphia Eagles. Always at the forefront of people in Philadelphia.
Yeah, they won big last night. No, the Timberwolves did, but the Thunder. How about the Thunder game?
Yeah, well, there's no Steph Curry. You should.
Yeah, that was Wednesday. The Thunder game. Oh, no, Steph Curry last night. Yeah, I didn't watch the NBA last night. I watched it a couple nights ago. I watched the Knicks and the Celtics game. That's been really good. When is that on again? That should be on soon.
I think it's on tonight. I haven't checked, but
tomorrow. We got Cavs Pacers tonight, and then
they got too many off days, man.
Thunder Nuggets tonight. So and then you got Celtics Knicks tomorrow, 3:30. How about that? 3:30 in the day. I like that. So we'll be watching that. I'll be tuned in on that. Johnny Mac will talk a little football today. Good to have everybody in here on a Football Friday. Appreciate all of our great viewership we've had this week here in the offseason. So big thanks to each and every one of you guys for keeping the show chugging along. We do appreciate each and every one of you. So make sure you guys hit that like button. John, we got some great football topics today, and then we will open up for some questions in hour number 2 as well. So any questions you guys have for Johnny Mac, all right, you put them in the chat. Super chat them, whatever you got to do to get that comment read. All right. Some of you will spam it until I click it. Whatever you got to do. All right. We'll get some comments from the chatters. No new news in Eagle Land today, so it's our first day with nothing really in terms of new news. But there has been some stuff happening in the NFL that we'll talk about. John, I want to start today by talking about the secondary on the defense. Yesterday we talked a little bit about it, but we never got to the secondary. And you wrote an article. The Eagles avoided the big name trap for now. All right. And that has to do with Justin Simmons. That has to do with some of the other options that we've talked about. Where are you on that as we sit here on May 9th? I don't want to read your article on the air, so I'll let you kind of elaborate on where you are on that and the secondary as it stands today, because, you know, John, you talk about running nickel. Well, you got a lot of changes in nickel. I mean, you got 2 new guys in there. Darius Slay is a big loss. CJ Gardner-Johnson's a big loss. So where are you right now on this Eagles secondary and how prepared they are for the season?
Yeah, and if you go deeper down the depth chart, you lose Isaiah Rodgers as well, Avonte Maddox. So they lost a lot of pieces in what was a very good secondary, very good defense. And the piece you pointed on Sports Illustrated, basically, I think the Eagles should avoid the big name trap. Not that they have. Who knows? They might wake up today and say, right, we got to go get Justin Simmons. I will say this, you know, this is one of those things where you got to wait for OTAs and you got to wait for probably the first couple of weeks of training camp. And then if Vic Fangio, because he assesses these things pretty quickly, Sidney Brown's not ready to take a step forward. Andrew Mukuba's not ready as a rookie. Then you might entertain it in August. In the meantime, if Justin Simmons signs somewhere else, which probably won't, probably wait for training camp or an injury or something like that. You know, then you say, all right, say LaBie, we didn't get it, you know, whatever, and you make do. But the whole philosophy of this team is that, you know, you have all these veteran players making big money, mostly on the offensive side of the ball. But the defense has started with Zach Bond, and you know what's coming with Jalen Carter. You know what's coming potentially with Nolan Smith. You know what's coming 2 years down the road with potentially with Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. So you got to pay all these guys. And the other parts, you got to fit in with young, cost-effective players.
Right.
You can't just go out and get Justin Simmons and Javian Clowney. Everybody's going to bring that up today.
No, I don't.
Again.
I don't want that.
And Von Miller. No, you gotta get the younger players involved. And sometimes there's some startup costs to that. And obviously the Eagles believe in their coaching staff and their developmental abilities, and they got to get these guys up to speed to be competent. That doesn't mean be CJ Gardner-Johnson in week 1 seamlessly. Not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen.
But, if by the second half of the season, Andrew Makuba's settling in, that's fine. And that's what you want. And then you got a 4-year starter at safety under pretty cost-effective terms. They probably be played that well. They probably extend him, but you get my point.
Right.
And that's where they have to go. That's been the whole plan. So you don't just get to, where are we, May 9th, and say, oh my God, I got to get Justin Simmons. I got to get you Javian Clowney. No. Now, if training camp goes really, really poorly, then you can open that up and say, all right, maybe I need a Band-Aid because we're a Super Bowl contender. But that's for later down the road, not now. Got to give these kids a chance to play.
We had Chris Franklin on yesterday, John, and he brought up a great point, though, about safety position in this defense. It's one thing to plug, Morrow in for Milton or something. Safeties have big responsibility in this defense. So I do anticipate there being some pretty decent startup cost here for Andrew Makuba. Who do you think would be the favorite right now to be the starter at safety?
Well, I think, from a logic standpoint, it would be Sidney Brown, but from the standpoint of, Sidney wasn't a Vic Fangio guy. He was here before Vic. And so the theory is that, Makuba's got the Vic Fangio seal of approval. That may be true. That may not be true. Maybe a legitimate competition. Typically, the player that's been here longer is going to get the first snap. That's how they've done it. The first rep, not that matters. But, I would say Sidney because he's been here for 2 years. But if Vic truly does, a lot of people talk with Bryce Huff, their whole mentality with Bryce Huff is, well, Vic doesn't like him. That may be true. I don't think it is, but I think he's just trying to find the best players and the best. And as things unfolded last year, he went with different players. He doesn't have the same players, so it might have to change. I think, you saw it last year at linebacker with Devin White and Nakobe Dean. Because again, I've explained people don't understand what training camp is, and they're like, well, he's taking the first rep every day. Vic's trying to get Nakobe Dean ready. That might be the case this year with Makuba, but we have to wait and see. He wants the best players he has on the field, so it should be a legitimate competition. But Makuba was brought in by Vic Fangio as part of the process, and Sidney wasn't. So I get why people go down that route.
It's gonna be interesting to see how this thing shapes up. I see Daz bringing up Vic's history of safeties. He likes smaller size safeties with high football IQs. The outlier was Simmons.
Well, it's because it's about coverage,
right?
And Howie sort of, when he was talking about safeties, mentioned there's no such thing as a box safety anymore. You got to be able to cover it.
Right.
You got to be able to play in space. And that would lean towards Makuba over Sidney Brown, who's more of the old school box safety.
Yeah,
so that would lean in his, and that's the defensive scheme. It's more important to be able to be a good coverage safety. But you can't be an embarrassment in run support either. So, but that's certainly the more important part of it in Vic's mind.
How good was CJ Gardner-Johnson last year? Do we overrate him? Is he properly rated? Like, I know he's going to be hard to replace, but you just brought up how important coverage is for Vic. I do remember a couple times in the season where, I feel like CJ Gardner-Johnson had some blown coverage. I'm not
Well,
saying
you
he had a
saw
bad
it.
year. I'm just saying how good was he last year and how hard is that to replace? Like Milton Williams was great. Josh Sweat was great last year. They're going to be hard guys to replace. How hard will CJ Gardner-Johnson be to replace?
Very hard. He had a great season last year. It was much better last season than 2022 from a consistency standpoint. But that year was way more. The first year he was way more undisciplined, to say it. Taking chances. And when you make that many plays, that's part of it. You got to walk that tightrope. You don't sit there and sit back and be cautious and make that many plays. So part of it is, what do you want? Do you want a playmaker? Or do you want just a guy who's going to be very, very cautious and fundamental and do that thing? So that's something people have to answer for themselves. I think they like the plays, the splash plays. But he had a very good season, especially second half of the season. He was off the charts.
Yeah. I was going to say he started a little slower. He got real good, though, later in the year.
Yeah. He really took off. And to me, it was by far his best season. Another indication of, the specialness of the season as a whole. But he also he's one of those guys who came into the league as a nickel corner and built up his body over the years, and you saw it over with some of the big hits.
He was a nickel in New Orleans, right, before he originally came here. Yeah.
And even the first year, he was kind of undersized, and all of a sudden he shows up after being in Detroit, and he's this monster. And that showed up as well in the physicality part of it. So he's a really good player, really big pain in the ass, but a really good player. And he's going to be difficult to replace. Well, I didn't even think he was this high. It's just he was 13th according to PFF in the entire league. I didn't even think he was that high, but that's pretty freaking good.
That's real good. No, it's it's PFF, so maybe it's not everything, but the other guy, I mean, if you look at Justin Simmons on there, he hasn't had great seasons recently. So that's why I'm like, I don't even know.
He's a descending player. Well, you're not comparing him to
No, you're not. But we started the conversation with talking about the big name thing and bringing in a guy like Justin Simmons. And I don't necessarily know if that's as big of an improvement over letting the young guys play as some might think. I think Justin's better.
Oh, no. Yeah. That's why they call it the big name trap. I
mean, I don't know if it's a big improvement.
Football moves very, very quickly. He's a very good player. He's a top 10 safety for a long time. And some of it was with Vic in Denver. So all the connections are obvious. He's no longer a top 10 player. He's going to be 32, I think. Descending, coming off not the best year. So yeah, you got to be careful for what you wish for and that's why they coined it the big name trap. Joe Banner coined it the big name trap. Right. You got to be careful with that.
And it feels like right now the Eagles are going the other way in terms of getting younger, prioritizing younger players. I mean,
well, they have the first move that was only for 2025. It's this offseason has been more about 2026 and preparing, to be honest, for Jalen.
I agree. And the Goddard move, John, was the first.
That was the first one. Yeah,
I agree.
That was the first one, and that only because it fell in their lap. I mean, they were moving on. Both sides thought they were moving on.
Right.
And he didn't get the contract he was expecting elsewhere, or at least, potentially. And that, trade compensation plays into that, how he plays hardball. He's stubborn, which he admits. So, next year he might, when he hits free agency, and even at his age, if he has another good season, especially if he stays healthy, he's got a chance to make some money. on a 2-year deal. So I think he made a smart decision. It's probably one that, you got to get over your ego a little bit, but I think it was the best spot for him, because the last thing you want to do is go to Tennessee and crappy team, rookie quarterback, you don't look good.
Yeah, that wouldn't have worked out well for Dallas.
Yeah. So I think he made the smart decision. And hopefully it works out for him like it worked out for Josh Sweat. But that's the one decision that's been about, the immediacy of 2025 only. And that's because it kind of fell in their lap, to be honest.
You think Goddard feels slighted at all by taking a pay cut after
course.
everybody else?
Yeah. But, so did Josh. Didn't affect Josh's play on the field. A lot of that takes care of itself, because they have to play well to get what they want in the end.
Right.
But sure. But the thing is, I think there's a difference. Like, it's like good cop, bad cop. You got to have the bad cops. In the case, the bad cops here are Howie and Bryce Johnston and the business guys. He loves the coaching. He loves Jason Michael, Dallas Goddard, tight ends coach. They're really close. Loves the coaching staff. Coaching staff wants him back. If you ask them, they don't care about the business. They just want the player. His teammates, he loves his teammates. So I think, they compartmentalize it. Is he pissed off at the business? Sure. Of course. But I don't think that's going to impact all that much.
Yeah. We'll see how it all shakes out. We'll get back to the defense too. I want to talk about the corner position as well, so we'll get into that. But John, as you just mentioned, the big name trap and getting younger as we talk about that, I'm thinking about this starting 22 as I picture it in my head right now. Lane Johnson's older than 30. Zach Bond's 28. Where am I missing that we got some age on this team? Is everybody under 30 in this starting 22?
Well, Dallas is over 30.
So Dallas, right? He's right, bringing him back.
I gotta say.
I think that's it. Goddard and Lane. I don't think there's one guy on the defense that's older than 28 starting.
Yeah, very young team.
Is that too young?
I don't think so. We'll see. Maybe in the secondary, we'll see. Slays was very important to this team. I think people kind of overlook that. Brandon was very important. I think people understand that, but in more of a role player aspect. Now all of a sudden, Jordan Davis leads your defensive line room from a leadership standpoint. Think about that. He's a young guy, but people gravitate towards him. So sometimes that takes care of itself. The interesting thing is corner, because, they also lost Devontae Maddox. So if you're looking for a leadership void, it's going to be at cornerback, in the cornerback room. I mean, Quinyon and Cooper are tremendous players, but they're both very quiet and understated. Yeah. They don't come across like slaves,
Yeah. I will say, we talk about how young of a team it is, though. But I mentioned this yesterday on the afternoon show. It's one thing to have a young team, which has its pros and its cons. This has got to be the most experienced group of young guys across the NFL. If you think about, and I know college isn't the same, but if you think about like Jalen Hurts, where he's been, and now he's only 26 and he's already been to 2 Super Bowls, winning one. Jalen Carter's been to a Super Bowl, won one. Jordan Davis has been to 2 Super Bowls in his first. My point is that these are young guys, but they are more experienced than your average 24, 25, 26, 27-year-old NFL player, at least in my opinion. And then go back to college. A lot of them have championship pedigree from there too.
Well, yeah, the championship part of it, I'm talking more of the leadership, the championship part of it, especially in college. All right, you're on the best team.
Yeah, I think it matters in the NFL though. Going to the Super Bowl, that's an experience.
Well, sure, to have the experience of going through the playoffs and understanding what it takes, that's always a positive. But yeah, I think there's more to the leadership part of it than just success.
Right.
Because you're going to have hard times. You know, we talk about, I talk about it all the time, unless you want to go back to Bill Russell and Yogi Berra and different eras where super teams were together and they won every year, everybody from Tom Brady to Michael Jordan to whomever you want to throw in there loses their last game more than they win it. You know, look at Jalen's success. Everybody
Right.
points at Jalen. Well, he's been a 4-year starter. They got one Super Bowl, which is good, but you're losing your last game a heck of a lot more than you're winning your last game. That's just the nature of it. So, there's going to be some hard times baked into everybody's career, from the greatest down to, the luckiest. Sometimes you see these guys latch on to championship teams and get a bunch of rings and they're not even key contributors. But, to me, again, I love Vic's description of it. It's a great accomplishment. Didn't change me as a coach. Same thing with leadership. It's a great accomplishment. From a leadership standpoint, if you look at the captains of this team and the guys who were, they were great leaders the day before they won the Super Bowl. They were great leaders the day after they won the Super Bowl.
They do gain something valuable though from being there and winning it. You agree with that or no?
Well, yeah, I just said the experience of going through it, understanding what it takes.
But it's not everything. I do agree with you on that, especially from a leadership perspective. We'll see about that. John, if I pigeonholed you and said, who's the starting safety week 1, what would you say right now?
I would bet on Makuba.
Yeah,
and we'll see how, earlier when they traded CJ was a sort of big narrative around the NovaCare complex that they wanted Sydney, they wanted Sydney, they wanted to give Sydney the opportunity to compete because he's the one guy who's been a premium pick over the past couple of years that hasn't gotten that opportunity, partially because of the torn ACL. So we're going to see if that's real or that was lip service. And it's going to be a legitimate competition. If it's a legitimate competition, I think it's closer, but I don't know how legitimate that competition. I think they drafted him to play him, Makuba. And I think he fits what they want a little bit better from a trait standpoint. So as long as he doesn't crap the bed in training camp, I think he's going to be the starter.
There you go, Johnny Mac. Let's move over to the other cornerback spot where Darius Slay has left. All right. Right now, Keely Ringo's the leader in the clubhouse. I would say from where we are today, we haven't seen anything on the field. So just assuming Keely Ringo. You also brought in Adoree Jackson and any other options you want to throw in there. What's your level of concern on this position and how are you seeing it right now in May, the cornerback 2 spot for the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're putting a lot of eggs in the Keely Ringo basket, and I think he's got a lot of talent. And we're going to see if he can live up to it. Very difficult position to play. You're going to get beat, and when you do get beat, you're going to hear about it. So there's a lot of mental toughness that comes into play in that position. And you never know with a young player, but he's got everything from a talent standpoint to play the position. And, Adoree Jackson's been doing it for a while. I think he's one of the better insurance policies of the TAMU offseason. So I think that's solid depth at least. And there's some versatility there. He can back up the nickel if you need him to. So, but if he's a starter, I think that things didn't go to plan. And then it becomes more of an issue. And then, you got to consider moving parts as well. If Ringo doesn't nail down that job, you got to start thinking about the Cooper move as well.
Right.
Maybe a little bit quicker than they would have hoped for. So they got a lot of eggs in the Kelly Ringo basket.
You still have confidence in Kelly Ringo?
Yeah, I do. I said, I'm leaning on AJ more than myself.
Yeah, AJ Brown told you that.
Yeah. So, if AJ thinks he can play, I think he can play. But I think the other stuff is a more difficult part of it. Like I obviously he can do it from a physical standpoint. But like I said, you need to be very mentally tough at that position. And you also, in Vic's scheme, you also have to be, very football savvy. You got to have a high football IQ. He's not just going to point at a receiver and say, go cover that guy. You're going to have to play all these different zone defenses. You're going to have to communicate. So it's a little bit more difficult from that standpoint than maybe some other schemes around the NFL. And he's not going to waver from that because it's a young player. You saw it with Quinion and Cooper. He's not going to waver from it. So you got to keep up. Now, I'm not concerned about the physical part of it. I'm more concerned about the other parts of it.
You think Adoree Jackson has a good chance to start there? I happen to think he does. I mean, I like Keeley too. I'm not ruling him out. I just wonder if Vic is coming in and he's like, listen, I got to get a more established player in there. I don't know if Adoree Jackson still has it, honestly, but how good of a chance do you think he has at starting?
Well, I think he's got a pretty good chance because there's a pretty good chance that Keeley doesn't pick it up. But I think if he's starting, it's not what they had hoped for. So he's an insurance policy. That's why he's here. And if he's starting, you don't want to use that insurance policy. You might have to for injuries and that's different. But if he is starting, things didn't go to plan. So, but yeah, does he have an opportunity? Of course, because we talk about all these young players. They're not all going to hit. They're not all going to step up and perform at the level. There's going to be some guys fitting in, maybe some guys who aren't even here yet, because maybe Vic does get to training camp and says, I've seen it happen too many times over the years where somebody's raving about somebody during the draft and saying, oh, this kid can do this kid can do that. And then they get to camp and they're like, oh shit, you're not ready. And they got to pivot and go in a different direction. You're going to have that. I guarantee you're going to have it. I don't know where, but I guarantee you're going to have it.
Now, do you think Quinion's going to move to the other side this year, or is he going to stay where he was last year? I think he played right corner last year, if I'm not mistaken. This year, would he play left this year?
Yeah, that's an interesting. I assume he's going to flip over. I don't see why they wouldn't. I don't think they're concerned about, you want your best quarterback on the left side because more quarterbacks are right-handed. They're right dominant, obviously. That's the reason it is like that. And he's now your number one corner. So I do expect him to move to the left side.
Is that we're not worried about that. I'm not worried about the player. I'm just wondering, you hear that with tackles.
I'd be more worried about it if they didn't move him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like then they would be showing you that he couldn't do it, maybe.
Yeah, well, they'd be showing you that not that that he's not confident enough to do it, or he's not, or they don't have one or the other. That would be more concerning. Like if he doesn't take the first snap at left corner, that would be concerning to me. And everything about him says, he doesn't care. So I can't imagine they would just leave him at right corner because that's where it worked last year. I mean, They lost Darius Slay. He's your best corner. He should be on the left side.
It would also kind of isolate one side. That left side would be a little bit of a weak spot on that defense. Even if the players play well, you got two new players in there. If you let's just say you left Quinion on the right, you'd have Keely Ringo and you'd have Andrew McCuba at strong safety. That I think quarterbacks will be picking on that all year.
Well, they're probably going to be picking on it. Well,
I know, but if you move Quinion over there, you can make it. You can hide it a little better.
Yeah, I don't know if you can, other than if quarterbacks. There's a lot of there's a lot of bad teams. Number one, B, there's a lot of bad quarterbacks or mediocre.
I'll tell you what, we got a tough schedule next year.
So a lot of guys, and you'll see it in game. Sometimes when Slade would get banged up, you say, all right, let's see him. They're going to probably attack Rodgers. And they never did. And it's like, that doesn't make a lot. Man, it's because they can't. They're not capable. They're not, they're not equipped to do things on the move like that. Whereas, a Tom Brady or, he's like a shark in the water. If somebody gets hurt, he's like, I'm going there. A lot of teams aren't capable of doing that, especially with younger quarterbacks. And then, part of it is they're not good enough. So all of that factors into it. But yeah, I would be very surprised if Quignon's not the left corner this year. Very surprised.
Going to be interesting to see. You got Keely Ringo, and you got the safety concern as well. So a couple questions there in that secondary. I'll pull up a couple comments, see what John thinks. Killer Tomato checks in. Any chance he shadows receivers from side to side? Talking about Quinion there.
No.
That's just the Vic defense, right? They don't play that man, so they're not gonna do that.
Very rarely, And again, nothing's 100%. Very, very rarely. Very rarely. Last year I said, that everybody, the Guantanamo Bay and stuff, lockdown corner. It's not what he does. It's not what he does.
No. That's not what Vic's asking anybody to do.
And by the way, don't listen to me. Listen to Vic. He'll say it all that. Well, we play a lot of zone coverage. No. Forget about traveling corners.
Abe says, what position did Adoree play on the Giants? Was he a depth piece or was he a starter for CB1?
He was a starter, but last year, no, he was,
it was a couple years ago.
He was a long-time starter.
You got a big deal a couple years ago, John.
Oh, you got the Eagles were trying to say you got a huge deal. Eagles were trying to sign him too. Giants got him in the building first. He was scheduled to visit the Eagles after the Giants. Giants didn't let him out of the building. We asked him about that. He said he's a USC guy. There's a bunch of Southern Cal people he was comfortable with, and he signed with the Giants, and it was 3 years, $39 million, I think. Remember, at the time, this is like 2021. That's big money. It's not as big now, but back then, that's big money. He was a very good player in Tennessee, and he started early in his career with the Giants, and even last year, he had a ton of starts. Not last year. Last year backed off. 2023, he had a ton of starts, and then it backed off a little bit last year. But he's got a lot of starts, and 80-ish, I would say. He was a good player, but again, this league moves quickly.
Yeah, real quick.
Adoree Jackson of 2021 is getting $39 million. Adoree Jackson of 2025 is getting under $2 million. That's how quickly this league moves.
Life comes at you quick. It certainly does. No doubt about it. John, we talked about the age of the team, which is it's young. Holy moly. And we talked about, the big name trap at safety. How about this? YNG checks in. He says, Eagles should bring in Gilmore. They need a veteran. Now, maybe you don't like that player, but
come on, guys.
What are your thoughts, though, on bringing in a more?
First of all, I love Stephon Gilmore. Love him. He's very much like Slay. It's amazing he plays the way he does at the age he is. But we just talked about it. We just talked about the big name trap. They have all these players they have to pay big money to. So how do you do that and put together a Super Bowl contender? Well, the spots you don't have those big money players. You got to get young, cost
Yeah,
effective
but I'm
players.
talking about 25, John. I'm not talking about the future.
Well, yeah. So let's bring in Gilmore. Let's bring in Simmons. Let's bring in Von
Oh,
Miller.
wait, when you just said that, did you mean because paying the cash to Gilmore this year takes away from it from giving it in the future?
Well, he's more expensive. Jadeveon Clowney, the reason, he's the first number 1 overall pick that's turned into a journeyman. He just goes from team to team to team every year, and somebody gives him 10 plus million. Same thing with Gilmore.
Yeah.
I think he got 8 million. So he's getting down a little bit last year. And the year before it was Dallas and blah, blah, blah. And he goes from team to team to team. These guys are still expensive, comparatively speaking. But would they make them better? Probably in the short term.
That's what I'm talking about. How good is our defense going to be this year compared to what it was last year? I'm not expecting it to be what it was last year, but how do you keep the fall off insignificant enough to remain a true Super Bowl contender?
There's a balancing act.
I agree. I'm not saying there isn't. I was just asking what you think of bringing in a veteran at that position.
No. Again, if everybody and you already have a veteran at that position. I just explained that's a position you already have a veteran. So I'm looking it up. 82 career starts in the NFL. The Dory Jackson. 82. You already have a veteran. Now, edge rusher, you don't have a veteran, an accomplished veteran. And I'm putting Kopf off to the side. So would Clowney make him better? Fuck yeah. I mean, yes.
I'm not a huge Clowney guy, but yeah.
I don't care.
He'd make him better. Yeah.
Yeah. Justin Simmons, would he make him better? Yes. Yes. Slightly, incrementally. Kevin Byard like.
Yeah.
And by that I mean he'd line up correctly and he's a professional. And
but with what you're missing there, with what you're losing out on developing your new young safety, I don't think that's worth it.
Well, exactly. And then you're setting back the development of younger players and waiting. There's a balancing act, and the last thing you want to do is bring in a bunch of 30 plus players who are, ring chasing and all at once. And you're costing the development of 3 younger players or setting it back. Yeah, it's just not the way the Eagles do business. And you should be thankful for that. That's the way bad teams do business. To be honest.
We'll see what they end up doing. I do think those secondary questions are very applicable this year. We're going to be watching them closely all through camp, all through the offseason, see what they do, see how Vic Fangio handles it. John, I'm going to close out this topic here, this defensive secondary topic with what are your expectations of where this defense is going to fall right now? You can change it. It's May. They could sign a player. You could go show up to camp and Keely Ringo looks like a star. You can change it. But on May 9th, they were the number 1 defense in football last year.
Well, I've said pretty consistently, if they ran it back exactly in some magical world, I don't think they would have been number 1 again, just because there's a natural sort of evolution of, teams doing things a little bit differently. And guys, career years are career years for a reason. They generally don't follow up career year with career year. Part of that regression to the mean. So, I think 1 with the group they had last year probably turns into, 7 or 8 or something there, like the offense, let's say 8th. And now with all the losses, I think you're probably outside the top 10 unless a bunch of young guys develop. But I don't think you're going to fall to the 20s or what they were before Vic got here. They have too many good players. still starting with Jalen Carter and Zach Bond.
Is that going to be good enough to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender?
Yeah. As long as the offense is going to have to do a little bit more, but the offense is technically more talented than the defense.
Dabney checks in. He says, we will still be a top 3 defense. As long as Jalen Carter and Fangio are there, we'll be fine.
Okay. They're human beings. Vic has been around for 40 years. He's had plenty of he's been a coordinator for 20 plus. He's had plenty of non-top 3 defenses. Aaron Donald.
Plenty of non-top 10 defenses.
Yeah. Aaron Donald is the best defensive tackle I've seen in this generation. And with all due respect to Jalen Carter, he ain't Aaron Donald. And that didn't guarantee the Rams a top 3 defense every single year. They can only do so much. And Jalen will be a superstar, and he'll be one of the best defensive tackles in football, and he'll get his $40 million contract, and Vic will continue to be the best defensive coordinator in football. But you need more than that to have a top 3 defense. And a bunch of other guys are going to have to contribute mightily, as you saw last year.
Yeah. I think Jalen Carter has a chance to be the best defensive player in all of football. Maybe not this year, but at some point in the future here.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he might make that move last year. I thought he'd be a legitimate. So we're all waiting for him to be.
He was last year. I'm not trying. I don't want to say that and act like he wasn't what we expected.
No, he was great, but I thought maybe he would take the leap and be in the defensive player of the year conversation. He's getting closer. And he's great, but you don't just have the top 3 defense because you have Jalen Carter. Doesn't work that way. That's why I brought up Aaron Donald, because he's, the best defensive player of his generation. No doubt about it. First ballot Hall of Famer. There's 10 other guys on the field. If the 10 other guys aren't performing their job, Aaron Donald, you can easily get around Aaron Donald. Not easily, but you get my point. You can do things. You can double team him. You can slide protection his way, as the Eagles did every single time they played him. Just ask Jason Kelce. You can do all these different things to try to limit his effectiveness, and that's what teams already are doing to Jalen Carter. You need other players. It's not just about one guy.
So you got him outside the top 10 as it stands here on May 9th. I'm going to say my floor on that defense is 9. Okay, I think they're going to be above 9, and my optimistic would be top 5.
Well, I just did this at Sports Illustrated. So I'll do it to you. I'm going to flip the tables. I'll do it to you. Did they get better or worse at edge rusher with Josh Sweat out of the building?
They got worse.
Did they get better or worse with Milton Williams out of the building?
They got worse.
Did they get better or worse with Darius Slay out of the building?
They got worse.
Did they get better or worse with Isaiah Rodgers as the cornerback 3?
Push. I think if Adoree Jackson's your cornerback 3, I think you'll be push.
Did they get better or worse with Oren Burks as the top backup linebacker?
They got worse. Presumably. I mean, you don't know what Trotter is.
Did they get better or worse at safety without CJ Gardner-Johnson?
They got worse.
There you have it. And the only one I would argue with you is Isaiah Rodgers. They got worse there too, because he played at a very high level last season. And by the way, I don't even if all those guys were back, and I didn't bring up Brandon. They got rotational defensive end. Yeah. They got worse. If you brought all those guys back, they're probably not having the same season. Especially, Burks never played like that before. He's probably, if he's forced to play next year, he's probably not going to play that well. Rodgers, I don't know what Rodgers is. He's going to get a chance to start. But last year, in that role, He was very effective. I don't know if Milton's going to play as well as he did. Probably not. On and on and on. But I think anybody with any objectivity is saying they got worse at the vast majority of those
No, they
positions.
did. They did. I mean, look, they did, but I think the chance still exists. I mean, when I look at Vic Fangio's defense, I think it relies more on the unit than it does on any one individual player. Now, you still need good individual players. So from your perspective, I'm not dismissing anything you just said. I think you're right. I think we did get worse at all those positions. But can the defense as a cohesive unit still operate as a top 10 defense if everybody does their job well enough within the system that Vic creates? I think you can.
Well, of course you can. There's just so many questions. So many questions. And I didn't even go deeper down. You can revisit our conversation with Mike Gill a couple weeks ago. Mike went even deeper. It's like, is Zach Bond going to play at the same level?
Right. Quinyon and Cooper, are they going to play at the same level?
Yeah, Quinyon and Cooper. Nolan Smith, is he going to play at the same level he did the last 9 games? There's a lot of questions. The regression to the mean counts with those guys as well. A lot of questions.
That's fair. I'm still going to go floor at 9 and ceiling somewhere in the top 5. Now, again, that's a ceiling. I'm admitting that's a very optimistic outlook. All right.
Well, I would say ceiling. I would agree with you. It's top 5. Everything goes correctly. Floor, I'm much lower than you. The floor,
where are you at on the floor?
The floor is probably,
don't tell me 20.
17, 18, 19, somewhere in that range. The floor is, much lower than top 10. And I might even be kind with that. You've seen it. I mean, it's like relief pitchers in baseball. You have a good year, you have a bad year. You have a good year, you have a bad year. Unless you're Mariano Rivera.
Yeah.
All over. You have a good year, a bad year. That's what happens with defenses. You saw, they went from, I believe, the 31st ranked pass defense in 2023 to number 1.
Boy, if we're the 17th overall defense, this is not going to be a Super Bowl contender.
Well, depends on what the offense is doing. The offense is, in that case, and the offense is going to have to get better, I think, in general, and they want to get better, obviously. But that's where all the money is, let's be honest.
Yeah, no, it is. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just saying when you look at the team last year and the historic season that they had, I mean, the defense was a massive part of that. Even as good as the offense was, one of the reasons that the Eagles were able to run the ball with Saquon Barkley so much is because nobody could score damn points on the Eagles. They give up 13 or 14 points a game. Whatever.
Yeah, it's a big, you're not going to run the ball if you're down 2
so
scores.
It's complementary football. We've talked about that a lot. How replacing the players is one thing. Replacing the magic of the season is even harder to do. With how well it worked complementary.
Special for a reason. I say it all the time.
Yes, it is. Good.
But the offense is going to have to pick it up. The defense carried the offense last season, which is crazy, to be honest. But that's what happened. Even look at the Super Bowl. And your point about you can play a certain way only if the defense is doing their job and the complementary aspect of it. That's what happened. And now it might have to be more of the offense, not all the time, but occasionally carrying the defense a little bit. Which is what it should be on paper, by the way.
Right. To close out this segment, I want everybody to put in the chat what they're going to be ranked. I don't want top 5, top 10. Give me what they're going to be ranked.
It's going to be a bunch of top 5s.
1, 3, 42.
It's going to be a bunch of top 5s.
All right. Give me
seamless transitions.
Give me what the Eagles will be ranked on defense in this year in 2025. JD3.
Give me some objectivity, guys. Objectivity.
Be as objective as your mind will allow.
Don't give me seamless.
All right. JD3 checks in. I agree we got worse, not only in talent, but leadership. Slay and BG were the leaders of that defense. Now our 2 leaders, Reed and Nakobe, are eligible for extensions. Who is the next guy up?
Oh,
Good
Reed,
question.
definitely. N'Kobe's injury set it back. I mean, N'Kobe's injury, he's not getting an extension. And I think it's going to be very difficult for N'Kobe to be back in 2026 because, like I said, he's either going to be healthy, play well, he's going to price himself out probably, or he's not going to be healthy and they're going to have to move on anyway. Unfortunate injury, part of the game, ugly part of the game. But yeah, Reed's getting an extension. He's definitely next. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Reed gets. It's going to be interesting for him. Flexen says top 10, 15, 12th for Jason.
All right. I'm proud of you guys.
That's not bad. 18. That's what are you, Johnny Mac? You're lower than Johnny Mac? Are you kidding me, Jesse?
It's 17, 18, 19. That's my floor.
Ghost number 2. Top 15, top 15. These guys didn't follow my instructions. 29.
Pumper. I'm proud of the objectivity. Not you, Pumper. That's not objective either.
Dabney says 3rd, 5th, 12th, 11th, 6th, 8th, 13th. All right, so I think people are realistic on this, man.
Yeah, I'm shocked. All right.
I tell you,
yeah, a lot. I mean, it's just
we got a good fan base, man, out here.
Just tremendous amount of turnover. Just and again, some of these guys are probably going to hit, but all of them, all these young players hitting at the same time. Yeah, I don't like those odds.
I like 6th. I'm going to go 6th if I had to give a number. I'm going to say 6th. Defense will be 6th there. Good stuff. Appreciate all of you guys for making the segment a great one. Johnny Mac, good breakdown of the secondary. It is going to be interesting on where this team goes and what Vic Fangio does. I can't wait for training camp because I just feel like that's where you get some answers on this stuff, or at least you can start to see. You didn't really get all the answers last year with Vic.
Well, you'll
get some of them. You'll get some of them. You'll start to see what he's.
Listen to this show, you'll get the answers. If you listen to others, you might get Devin White's going to be the starting linebacker.
That's true. That's true. So you might not like what Johnny has to say all the time, but you got to listen anyway if you want to be an educated fan. All right, let's move on here. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but I do want to hit my boy Jason A-Team, John, again at 8:04 a.m. Jason A-Team with a $20 banger after his big super chat yesterday. Jason, thank you for all your support, brother. Means the world to me, to us. Thank you. Good morning, fellas and JAKIB fam. Another great day. Make sure this weekend you let your mothers know how important they are. I will double down on that. Jason, here's a quick story for you mid-super chat. I was born on Mother's Day, all right? I was a Mother's Day baby. I was born on Mother's Day. So my mom tells me it's the best Mother's Day gift she ever got. I hope she's not lying to me. Wouldn't be here without them. Question, do you think the Eagles are thinking of trading Goddard? And he did follow it up and say mid-season like they did with Ertz.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that yesterday. Things would have to go very poorly. And I don't think things are going to go very poorly. Like if they're clearly not a Super Bowl contender and, the trade deadline is not even deep enough in the season to where that's going to be the case. I can't imagine that the Eagles would be out of it. So very unlikely. You never say 100%, but no, he's going to be a part of the team this year. If for some reason, and the only reason I could think of is the quarterback gets hurt and things turn drastically bad. Yeah, but very, very small path. He's going to be here.
Yeah, I think Goddard's going to be. I mean, you can't get rid of Goddard in the middle of the season. 18. What would that signal to a team that might have aspirations of going back and having a chance at repeating? Take your tight end and trade him for some.
Harrison Bryant might play so well. I didn't put that in.
JD3, man. John, if Harrison Bryant is anything this year, I gotta do something for JD. I gotta get him a Bryant jersey. Yeah. I gotta send him to a game. I gotta do something for JD3 if this guy is anything above a trash can.
I didn't say it was a trash can.
Well, I mean, he's like the 4th tight end on the roster right now.
Yeah, but I think it's legitimate of the 3 guys. And we're just going based on money, basically.
But John, Harrison Bryant is closer to Malik Carr than he is to Dallas.
Well, no, he's not. He's an NFL player, so he's
got Malik Carr on this roster. He's the 4th tight end, man. He's closer to the bottom, practice squad boys.
Well, I I think right now there's Dallas Goedert and 3 guys fighting for 2 spots. And I think any of them could get cut and any of them could be on the roster. So, I think he's on even footing with Calcaterra and Granson for the most part. But yeah, you have to give Granson a little bit of an advantage because he got a little bit more money, and you have to give Calcaterra a little bit of advantage because he's got the experience of being here with this coaching staff and this offense. So, yeah, you start him out at number 4 on the depth chart, but I do think he's got a legitimate chance to make the team. I do think that.
Good stuff. 18, appreciate your super chat, brother. Thank you, man, for all the support. Appreciate everybody in here. JD3, 18, everybody in the chat right now. Fleming, Angelo, Dro, Flexen, Brian Fleming, Daz is in here. Deshay's in here. Rich is in here. I appreciate all you guys. Brandon Howard, Sig Leward, Andrew Hernandez, Kirsten, my girl Kirsten. I appreciate all of you guys for being here. Hit that like button for us. All right, we've been slacking a little bit on the likes, but the views have been great, so we appreciate all you guys. Make sure you guys hit the like button. It does tell YouTube to share us to more people. So drop a like on the show. We'll be right back here in hour number 2. We'll take some questions from you guys, and we'll talk some NFC, NFC East, some offense, and all sorts of different things here on Birds 365 to wrap up the week. So appreciate you guys. We'll be right back at 3.